name is Arn Kislenko. I'm a historian. My specialty is the 20th century, but I've come here to Jerusalem because I want to find out what life was like in the first century. Look at this. A job that's still here after 2,000 years. Money changer. In this famous scene from the Gospels, Jesus sees the money changers in the temple. He overturns their tables and drives them out of the temple. Everybody's always been interested in the commotion Jesus caused. But I want to know what all these people were doing at the temple that day, and what they all did for a living. What were their jobs like? And what drove the economy? The hillsides around the city of Nazareth contain ruins that date back to biblical times. They've helped archaeologists and biblical scholars recreate what Nazareth would have looked like in Jesus' time. James Tabor, a biblical scholar specializing in the life of Jesus, is here to show me just how real it is. But listen, James, was Nazareth really like this?
I don't even think it could be reproduced, no matter what you did. Think about the crowdedness, the smells, the cacophony of sounds.
The animals.
Animals walking around, the dung in the street.
I was thinking it must have stunk.
It would have to. We're going to go into one of the houses here. Notice as we step inside through the door, we're actually outside in this courtyard area, this workshop area. Right. 90% of the life is outdoors, even though you're in the house with a bit of shelter from the sun. Think of all of these activities that go on in a village, particularly the manufacturing, like somebody's going to be making the pottery, somebody's going to be baking the bread.
Everybody does that out of their house.
Out of their house. So it really gives you a sense of that workshop atmosphere. Right. And here's an example of the weaving.
But there's another job they're doing in this house that I want to see, because it's one of the most famous jobs in the Bible: carpentry. We've all been told that when Jesus wasn't overturning tables, he was making them. Now, some carpenters' tools haven't changed in 2,000 years, but some have.
What's this tool for?
Drill. A drill. It's nothing like my drill.
Well, how do you use it?
Like that.
Oh, really? Can I try?
Yeah.
That is really tricky. Now I know why they invented power tools.
Yeah.
This is hard. Is it common to have a small child in the workplace like
Absolutely. This? Judaism taught that if you don't train your son in a profession, you've abandoned him, basically.
We're in a carpentry shop, most famous job in the world. I mean, is this how Jesus would have grown up?
Yeah, I think that's the image people have. It's certainly in the movies and the books. We've been studying the terms that are used, and Jesus is called a carpenter in English, but
right.
Of course it wasn't written in English, written in Greek.
Right.
But the word actually is tekton,
which means?
And it means sort of artisan or a builder, like a stonemason, which really doesn't fit woodworking as much.
Right.
So it could be any kind of builder. You notice there's not a lot of wood in a home,
right,
but more stone.
Lots of stone.
And most of the examples when Jesus taught, he talks about stone so often.
So it's Jesus the stonemason, not Jesus the
That
carpenter.
really does seem to be the best interpretation of the original text.
I mean, that's totally different than everything else we've ever been told before.
Yeah, I think the carpenter idea is romantic in a certain way. A better image is getting up at 3 in the morning and heading off to Sepphoris nearby for hard labor at 4 or 5 in the morning, right, coming back near dark.
Stone was the most important building material in biblical times, and easy to get from the rocky terrain. So Jesus the stonemason may have worked right here. So, hot on the trail of the job that Jesus may have actually done, I'm heading off to the nearby town of Sepphoris. Because it's here, only 3 miles, but a world away from the village where he grew up, that Jesus may have gotten his first taste of the occupying power of Rome. This is James Strange, a world-renowned authority on biblical archaeology. He's been excavating Sepphoris for nearly 30 years, so he'll know why stonemasons in nearby Nazareth could have worked here in Jesus' time.
All the houses and buildings that you see over here to the left, that's Nazareth.
Right there.
That's right. This is the economic center. So everybody from 18 miles around can come into this city and buy and sell. All the villagers, all the little hamlets, independent farmsteads, whatever they are. But also this city is in a major trade route that extends all the way to Italy and all the way to Egypt.
So it's a trade hub.
Yeah, very much so.
Would Jesus have come here?
When Herod the Great dies, this city revolts, and the Romans respond by destroying it. Then Herod the Great's son, Herod Antipas, inherits this city, so he gives orders that it be rebuilt. So thousands of workmen have to come in here. Someone has to cut the millions of stones that are in this mosaic floor.
Jesus very well could have come and worked here.
Jesus, his father, his brothers could all have been here.
That's incredible.
So the young Jesus lived right at the intersection of traditional Jewish culture and the urban life of the occupying Romans. He wasn't raised to live as the Romans did, but he may have built their houses.
It must have been
Huge houses. So the Romans didn't just occupy, they influenced many of the Jewish people. Many of them were Hellenized or Romanized, absorbing Greek and Roman culture right here in the busy city of Sepphoris. The Gospels tell us that when commerce threatened to take over the life of the temple, Jesus cracked the whip. And the seeds for that rage could have been sown here at Sepphoris, where Jesus was likely getting his hands dirty while trying to keep his soul clean. Jesus' job leads him to where the work is, and his ideas and philosophy begin to develop with huge consequences.
This is how every day began in first century villages, with women making bread before dawn.
In the time of the Bible, the men went out early to work in the fields, but the women were up first, making a meal for them to take along. When it came to biblical jobs, women literally kept the home fires burning. If you didn't want to use sticks to create friction and heat, and if you didn't have a flint to create a spark, you kept the fire going at all times to heat your home and cook your meals. Food historian Tova Dickstein is an expert in the foods of ancient Israel. She's helping me to prepare your basic year one meal. I can't wait to see how it tastes.
Is it healthy? I mean...
Yeah, this is very healthy. Why? Because it's a complete nutrition. This is whole wheat.
Right.
Whole wheat with lentil. It's a complete protein. So simple.
It is
That's
very
the
simple.
beauty of it. Yeah.
If we were living in biblical times, would this be all we'd ever eat?
No, this is the very basic ingredients, but people had more, like vegetables, garden vegetables, fruit, olive.
Now this smells amazing, it really does. And I'm not saying that because I helped to make it. Tova, this is far better than I thought it would be. This is absolutely delicious.
This diet provided all the nutrition you would need for a hard day of work in the fields. Many of the jobs here were connected to the land. On the day the Gospels tell us Jesus overturned the money changers' table, some of the people in the temple were likely farmers. They would have come here to bring their first crops as an offering of thanks. With your life dependent on your crops and animals, you figure everyone would try and get along. But the Bible tells us that Adam and Eve had two sons. Cain was a farmer, and Abel was a shepherd. And we know how that turned out. Ronit Meoz is an expert in ancient Israeli studies,
Yes.
and she can tell us what agricultural jobs around here were like.
A farmer, of course, would look at the shepherd as something very, very low. But I think the shepherd would look at the farmer as being a prisoner because he's tied to his land.
So do you mean that farmers and shepherds would compete?
Are not friends, especially if you have those goats.
Beyond their use as food, in biblical times, goats were also used for temple sacrifices. These money changers that Jesus will confront are converting foreign currency. And one of the reasons pilgrims needed the local currency is so that they could buy animals to sacrifice in the temple. But before they meet their fate as lunch or sacrifice, goats have their own ideas.
If she wants to eat from a tree, she will climb or as much as she can, and she will take the leaves. She will also take out the roots, something that the sheep cannot do. So for a farmer, she's a destroyer.
Maybe that's why the farmer Cain and the shepherd Abel didn't get along. Abel's livestock really got Cain's goat. And the sheep were useful not just for food, but for making clothes. But first, you had to catch them.
Would you like to lead this flock? Would you like to do that?
Sure, let's give it a try. I can do
Okay.
that. Wait! Let's go.
I think you forgot one.
Oh, yes. Did you see that? Champion shepherd. Is it terrible that I'm thinking lamb kebabs right about now?
For the biblical farmer, the most important task was growing enough food for his family. Animals provided crucial help plowing the fields and growing staple foods. No wonder the Bible mentions animals so often. They were life and lifeline.
Dia. Dia. Wrong dia. Wrong. Dia.
Very good.
Dia. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I'm doing it. From morning to night, I'd be out here
Morning to
plowing.
night, you'd be plowing now. It's really a lot of work.
I'm sweating now.
But you know that God said to Adam that with the sweat of your brow, you will get bread out of the land.
Yeah. There we go. That's a girl. So what's the worst thing that could happen as a farmer in biblical times?
No rain. The worst.
Nothing grows?
This is going to be bread. So if there is no bread, there is no life here.
From the time of the Bible right up to today, for the Jewish people, unless you've broken bread, you haven't had a meal. And in the Holy Temple, beyond the courtyard where the sacrifices were held, was the sanctuary. And the only food allowed in there was bread. But to grow the grains needed for your bread, you needed water.